they're lip professors. You know what I'm saying? They could tell you one thing and have you believe in another thing, you know what I'm saying? We're told one thing, but we know there's another thing going on.
The main reason we were at war, like he said, is because of the weapons of mass destruction.
There's a whole bunch of cover up there, but there's no proof.
Now you're seeing more and more that it wasn't truthful, and there was no weapons of mass destruction.
Really looking for the nuclear armaments, and they didn't find them. Whether they were there or they were never there, they went to Syria, you don't know. You just don't know.
Well, I really think that the people that conducted it did believe that there were weapons of mass destruction. They had good reason to believe that there were weapons of mass destruction because we gave them to him.
Getting Saddam Hussein was a purpose, but it wasn't the only reason to go there. I mean, if you would have got bin Laden, I would cheer him with a fervor like the British.
George Bush, there's been a lot of lies, a lot of cover-ups, and that's basically how his whole term in office has been from start to where it is now. With any president, there's always cover-ups and scandals and whatnot, But with Bush, I guess he stepped it up.
He basically played more of a bully and made us look bad as the country that basically we're going to bully our way around by showing force, which, is important at certain times. This wasn't the time.
It was a terrible oversight not to have enlisted the support of the UN, not to have listened to the findings of the weapons inspectors. It was unfortunately a misjudgment compounded by a series of mistakes and perceptions about what America looks like to people overseas. We were not welcomed as liberators as we were in Europe after World War II. And as a consequence, what we have on hand is a terrible mess that will lead to further bloodletting and instability in that part of the world. And that will be readily exploited by the nations that surround that particular country, including and in particular Iran.
Right now we're having the same issues with Iran. They were trying to do a lot with nuclear explosions, nuclear weapons, whole 9 yards. They have, the UN, they're trying to get in there and do another search, and they won't give them the right either. And I feel that it's wrong. It is wrong. A third world country like that with nuclear weapons, forget it. New York, never mind 911. It'll be worse than that 10 times over.
Do you think that the government was sufficiently prepared for 9/11?
No, I don't think anybody was prepared.
No, I don't think so. Because if they were, then it wouldn't have happened.
Well, clearly they weren't.
No, they weren't. That hit them by surprise.
No, I mean, something that I don't think you could prepare for.
I don't think they could anticipate anything.
The government didn't expect that to happen. How are we supposed to know these things?
From what I hear, there were a lot of warnings ahead of time.
Would you think that a plane would go across the street and hit that building? I don't think it would happen.
They knew about September 11th.
We were prepared.
The problem is they underestimated the abilities of our enemies, of the terrorists.
There were plenty of warning signs, many of which have been reported, many of which the 911 Commission noted, but the failure was definitely a failure of government in the sense that they did not see this particular matter coming.
I don't think anybody foresaw that, that such a horrendous thing could happen to the American people all on one day like that. I don't think the government or people were prepared for that.
I don't think it was prepared, but like I said, we got enough units, enough people to take care of it, enough money to get people to go down there and do what they got to do in emergency. So that's what he did. He just pulled some strings, pulled some money out there, and then we got a lot of volunteers, work from their heart, and that's what pulled it off.
I think they could have did a lot of things better. I think not only the government, but the state, realizing that there was a lot of things that could have been done that weren't done, that, nobody wants to pin the blame on one person. They're all trying to pin the blame on, somebody else.
I think who's at fault is the airline people. I think the airplane people build an airplane. They should put a secure door between them and the pilots.
There have been active security provisions for the airlines for many years because of hijackings.
And they should have video cameras and equipment that shows what's going on in back, so they can sit up there and figure out if there's a catastrophe going on. They certainly can secure that door And they should have the doors secured. And I think it was all, if they had doors they couldn't get through, there would be no problem. The airplanes would have never crashed into the buildings. The pilots would have been in control of the plane. They might have lost the plane. The guys could have blown up the plane. They could have killed everybody on the plane. But they wouldn't have killed 3,000 people in the World Trade Center.
There was no real plan for any kind of attack like this. And the sad part is these people were taking licensing in Florida and living in Buffalo or living next to you, and no one knew. And with the great intelligence that we have, it's like hard to imagine that they don't know.
After all, they had a pretty good warning about 10 years before. The World Trade Center was a unique structure in terms of its construction, uniquely vulnerable. There were insufficient protections to the building itself, insufficient vigilance on the part of government. It was generally not a success of al-Qaeda so much as it was a failure of the American government to have adequate situational awareness. It could have been easily prevented. It should have been. It should never have happened.
And do you think the government did a good job responding to Hurricane Katrina?
Oh, no, that's H-E-L double hockey sticks, no.
I think we helped a lot, you know, with them as best we could.
I think they did okay, period.
There's a lot of open wounds, a lot of open scars.
I know nothing about that.
Okay.
I think it responded well. I mean, like from what I see on TV, it looks kind of bad, but I think they did a good job because I know my school's fundraising for it. I know a lot of people went down there to help them, so I think they did pretty well.
Things like that, natural disasters, et cetera, you can't really prepare for them, but, you know, I guess in the sense of Katrina, I think a lot more could definitely have been done.
I think they did the best, but, you know, those people are poor, and, you know, I felt bad for them. They should have, the government could have done more.
I think a lot of that was racial, to be honest, with Katrina. You know, 70% black, and a lot of times, you know, when you get those type of ratios, it's a lot of neglect, not only with you know, natural disasters, but with schooling and jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
So when you say it's racial, are you saying that you think the government would have done more had there been a larger white community?
Of course.
I think there are some good people in New Orleans that have really gotten hurt, but majority were waiting for somebody else to handle their problems, and they didn't rally themselves enough to get themselves geared up to deal with the problem. And when you're stuck, or when you're in a boat that's sinking, you can sink or you can bail. And I think those people didn't bail.
I think they're making a big thing out of it. I think their mayor there pulled a lot of things.
The government of New Orleans failed the people miserably.
I think that there should be a panel of governors that should go over there and look at the situation.
Hurricane Katrina, you know, a lot of people tried blaming this gentleman that was running the whole effort, but I think that was a fallacy as well. I mean, they knew for 10 years that they needed these dams to be fixed, and the problem was the people on the inside would have wasted the money because the politicians were all crooks.
And I think that the response was probably a day late from the director of FEMA, who was overwhelmed by it. And it was a huge catastrophe.
They should have just went in, had these levees fixed 10 years ago, and this might not be the issue.
But if you look at the tsunami that killed 300,000 people and devastated half the Indian Ocean, those people are resilient, they're back in line, they're up, they're cleaning the streets, they're working together, they've overcome one of the world's worst disasters. And to see people in New Orleans crying, where's mine, what is the government doing for me lately, kind of gives me a bad taste in my mouth.
Well, the flooding of New Orleans was perhaps the most widely predicted natural disaster that could occur in this country. The government was clearly unprepared for the scale of the difficulty, clearly not on top of even the newscasts as they were occurring. There were government officials in the weather department seeking to alert both the city, the state, and federal authorities. It was a gigantic failure, perhaps the worst failure with respect to civil preparedness that the country has ever seen.